The interrogation chamber was cold and empty, except for two figures seated on opposite sides of a metallic table. The overhead lights cast harsh shadows across the room. One figure was tall, with smooth blue skin and multiple arm joints that moved with mechanical precision. Commander Vexter of the Krell Empire sat rigid, his mandibles clicking softly. With what might have been nervousness, across from him sat a human named Captain Marcus Holland. The human was smaller, fragile in appearance, with rough skin and only two functional arms. His body bore the marks of conflict. Bandages covered several wounds, and his left eye carried bruising that suggested recent violence. Yet when Marcus met Vexter's gaze, his expression revealed no fear, only a strange kind of patience. Vexter had requested this meeting himself, a fact that surprised many in the military command. The protocol dictated that captured enemies should be interrogated, extracted for intelligence, then removed from existence. But Vexter had submitted a formal request to speak. With the prisoner voluntarily, the request had been approved only because the Krell commander held high enough rank that denying him seemed disrespectful. "You requested this interview," Marcus said, his voice carrying the melodic quality typical of human speech. There was no accusation in his tone, merely observation. Vexer's universal translator processed the words and converted them into Krell conceptual language. His species rarely felt comfortable with silence, but this moment demanded careful consideration. The commander had lived for 70 seasons. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had overseen the deaths of thousands. His military record was perfect, unblemished by failure or mercy. Yet he had requested this meeting because he needed to speak to a human who could understand what he had experienced. "I have killed many of your kind," Vexter began, his voice deeper than human hearing could fully process. Though the translator compensated, "I have won battles against your military forces. I have occupied your outposts and executed your soldiers according to protocol." He paused, a gesture that in Krell culture signified emotional disturbance. "But I have never understood your species." Marcus tilted his head slightly, a human gesture of curiosity. "What is it you do not understand?" "Fear," Vexter said, and the word carried weight that transcended language. "We understand fear in the Krell Empire. We understand it as a weakness that prevents clear thinking. Therefore, we have evolved beyond it. Our doctrine, our military strategy, our entire civilization is built upon the principle that superior intelligence and discipline eliminate the need for emotional responses, including fear." The commander stood and began pacing the chamber. His movements were fluid despite his size, each step precise and controlled. "Yet your species fights with fear present in your hearts, and somehow you become more dangerous, not less. So I have asked myself for many seasons why this would be true. If fear is weakness, why does it not make you weak?" Marcus remained seated, watching the alien walk back and forth. "What conclusion did you reach?" "I concluded that I was wrong about what fear is, what it means, and what purpose it might serve in warfare." Vexter stopped his pacing and turned to face Marcus directly. "I have come to you because I have memories that I cannot reconcile with my training. And I believe you deserve to know what happened in those moments. I believe, perhaps, that humanity itself deserves to know what I have witnessed." The human commander waited, his expression open and receptive. Vexter returned to his seat at the metallic table. His movements suggested both weariness and the weight of long contemplation. "I will tell you of the battles that changed my understanding. I will tell you of the warriors I faced, the decisions they made, the reasons those decisions have haunted every season since." He produced a small data device from his uniform pocket and activated it, filling the chamber with soft blue light. "These are my personal records, my own observations, my testimony of what human warriors taught me about warfare and about courage and about what it means to fight for something beyond survival. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his human eyes reflecting the blue light. I was present when we attacked Orbital Station 7. Vexter continued. I was there when we encountered a commander named Kate Morrison. I was there when she chose her death as a mathematical equation. The calculation was precise and logical by our standards. Yet she included something in that equation that our doctrine has no category for. She included her own life as the variable that balanced the equation. My people have a concept, Marcus said slowly. We call it sacrifice. We teach it to our children as the highest form of courage. Yes, Vexter said, and his mandibles clicked once. Sharply. That is what I could not understand. You do not remove weakness from your heart. You transform it into fuel. You do not eliminate fear. You move forward despite it. You calculate cost in ways that include the cost to yourselves. And you accept that cost anyway. The commander stood again and approached the chamber window, looking out into the detention facility beyond. I have spent many seasons questioning the accuracy of my own memories, wondering if perhaps my translation systems had malfunctioned and I have misunderstood what I witnessed, but I have come to believe the memories are accurate, and that my understanding was simply incomplete. Marcus waited as Vexter gathered himself. Kate Morrison ordered her soldiers to hold a defensive position that she knew was indefensible. The commander said, his voice carrying a quality that human linguists would have interpreted as profound sadness. She positioned them knowing they would likely die. She gave them this order anyway because doing so would buy enough time for civilians to evacuate. The mathematics worked. The exchange was completed. She sacrificed her own soldiers. She sacrificed herself. And in doing so, she saved 3,000 non-combatants. This is what humans are, Marcus said quietly. This is why we survive, why we continue. Why species that are technologically superior to us cannot defeat us. Vexter turned from the window. I am beginning to understand why else would I be here. Speaking with you, voluntarily sharing classified memories from my own command experience. Why are you here? Marcus asked. The commander sat once more and met the human's gaze directly. Because you deserve to know that your sacrifice has been witnessed, honored, and understood by at least one member of the species that hunted you. I have come to share these memories because they represent the terrifying truth about human warfare. A truth that your military strategists may not realize they possess. Marcus waited for the commander to continue. The truth is this. You are dangerous not because of your weapons or your technology. You are dangerous because you are willing to die for abstract concepts. Your species will sacrifice everything for what you call honor, or duty, or the protection of the innocent. This makes you unpredictable in ways that destroy all. Military doctrine. The Krell Empire conquered 17 systems through superior force, but humanity will never be conquered because you fight with something my species abandoned long ago. And that something makes you infinitely more powerful than we could ever be. Vexter paused, allowing his words to settle between them like physical objects. I am here because I need to remember all of it, and I need someone else to know that I remember. The memory begins with arrival protocols and tactical deployment sequences. Vexter commanded the Krell Assault Force designated for Orbital Station 7. A human outpost positioned along the border of contested space. The station itself was not large by galactic standards. It had capacity for perhaps 5,000 personnel, and Krell intelligence suggested that fewer than 400 military personnel defended it. The human technology was observable on every scan, every reading, every probe. They had shields and weapons, certainly, but they operated at approximately 30% of Krell efficiency ratings. Vexter had requested this assignment because the mathematics were simple and elegant. Conquer the station. Eliminate or capture the defending force. Establish Krell occupation protocols. The entire operation should require perhaps 6 hours. No more than 10, if the humans mounted serious resistance, which was unlikely given the comparison in firepower. His assault force consisted of 1,200 soldiers. Advanced hover tanks, plasma artillery, and weapons that humans had no equivalents for the station's defenses. By contrast, were standard military installations without distinguishing features. Vexler had approved the operation sequence with the confidence of someone who had executed dozens of similar operations without difficulty. The humans retreated. This was not unexpected. The defending force, numbering perhaps 370 soldiers, could not hold the main hangar against Krell superiority. They withdrew deeper into the station interior, collapsing bulkheads behind them, retreating in what appeared to be a disorganized pattern toward the upper sections. Vexler's forces pursued, advancing through corridors that grew progressively narrower and more confined. Then the environment became a weapon. The first decompression came without warning. The entire sector on the west wing was voided of atmosphere with surgical precision, removing air and pressure in a controlled sequence that Krell sensors had somehow missed during initial scans. Vexler lost 30 soldiers in that first moment, their bodies tumbling through expanding void as the humans had somehow managed to compromise the external hull without triggering any detection system. Commander adjusted his forces and continued the advance, but the humans had prepared thoroughly. The station's internal layout became a labyrinth of traps. Each retreat seemed to take the Krell forces deeper into more confined spaces, and each confined space harbored new surprises. Radiation vented from reactor conduits that humans had deliberately overloaded. Structural supports collapsed in sequences that appeared random, but had clearly been calculated. Corridor junctions detonated with explosives, placed with precise timing that suggested preparation spanning weeks or months. What shocked Vexler most was that the humans were succeeding in delaying his assault. His superior force, his weapons technology, his tactical training were all being negated by a defending force that had made a choice to sacrifice the station itself in order to slow the Krell advance. Vexler realized then that this was never about defending territory. This was about buying time for something else. He ordered his forces to cease pursuit and focus on understanding the human strategy. His secondary teams accessed the station's records and provided him with crucial intelligence. The humans had been evacuating civilians from the station in transport vessels, moving them to a location designated as a secure sanctuary, approximately 15 light-years distant. The entire defense of Orbital Station 7 was not about defending the station. It was about protecting non-combatants, their families, their children. A human commander named Kate Morrison was leading the defensive effort. Morrison's records indicated she held the rank equivalent to a Krell captain, meaning she was senior military personnel of moderate authority. She had made the decision independently to create the spiral defense, knowing that her strategy would minimize civilian casualties, even if it meant maximum military casualties among her own forces. Vex Tar accessed the final communication logs, just as Morrison's defensive position collapsed under Krell artillery bombardment. He found her last recorded message directed toward the retreating evacuation transports. Her voice carried no desperation, no fear, only the calm clarity of someone making a final report. This is Commander Morrison. You are clear to make jump to sanctuary coordinates. The evacuation window is closed. I repeat, the evacuation window is closed. All civilian personnel have been transported. A pause followed. Then final instruction. Maintain course to sanctuary. Do not acknowledge this transmission live, and remember that we chose this The communication ended with explosion and structural collapse. Rexosaurus forces secured the station within the hour. Morrison and her entire defensive force were confirmed dead. Casualties numbering 293 human soldiers and 0 civilians the humans had calculated the exchange rate of their own lives against civilian survival, and they had accepted that mathematics with clear eyes and full knowledge of the cost. The Krell commander stood in the main hangar of the secured station, surrounded by his victorious forces, and experienced something his training had not prepared him for. The victory felt hollow and wrong in Krell military doctrine. Efficiency was the measure of success. Vexthor had succeeded with minimal casualties to his own force, maximum casualties to the enemy, and complete control of the objective by all measurable standards. This was perfect military operation. Yet as he reviewed the final records, as he witnessed the courage of the human defenders, something in his understanding shifted. Kate Morrison's final recorded statement played once more in his mind. She had not fought to defeat the Krell. She had not fought to win the station. She had not fought for glory or advancement. She had fought so that people she loved would survive. Vexthar understood conquest as a goal, understood dominance as a measure of success. But he did not understand fighting for something beyond oneself. His troops celebrated the victory with standard protocols. Vexthor participated in the ceremonies, gave commendations to his subordinates, filed his reports with the Krell military command. Yet his mind remained in that final moment when Morrison had ordered her defense to stand firm, had accepted the calculations of her own death, and had transformed her final moments into a shield for others. The commander spent several cycles reviewing Morrison's service records and personal logs. He learned that she had a family waiting in the sanctuary coordinates, that she had not expected to survive the evacuation, that she had made peace with her own death before the Krell assault ever began. He learned that human soldiers under her command had volunteered for the suicide defense, knowing the probability of survival was near 0. And they had volunteered anyway because their commander asked them to, because civilians depended on their sacrifice, because some things mattered more than life itself. Vex Tar had been trained to view emotion as a weakness that clouded judgment. He had been taught that superior intellect and discipline would always overcome inferior species, lacking the mental discipline required for advanced civilization. Yet he stood on a conquered station, surrounded by evidence that human emotions had somehow made them more effective warriors. Not less, the commander made a decision that would echo across multiple seasons. His report to Krell military command contained all the necessary details and measurements of success, but he also included personal observations that violated standard protocol. He documented his observations about human sacrifice, about the tactical advantages gained through emotional commitment, about the possibility that the Krell understanding of weakness might actually be incorrect. His superiors filed his report without comment, but Vexthor knew that seed had been planted, and he could not unplant it. His certainty about Krell superiority had developed a fracture, and that fracture would only grow larger as he encountered more humans, as he learned more about their capacity for sacrifice, as he began to understand that what he had called weakness was actually the source of their greatest strength. The pursuit of human military forces continued across 3 star systems, and with each engagement, Vexthor's certainty diminished. His fleet was faster than human vessels. His weapons were more powerful, his soldiers more numerous and better trained. Yet the humans consistently avoided direct confrontation and instead executed tactical operations that demonstrated an entirely different approach to warfare. After the capture of Orbital Station 7, Vexter expected the human fleet to fragment and scatter into deep space. This is what Krell logic dictated. A weaker force should disperse when facing superior opposition. It would buy time, reduce casualties through separation, and provide each unit with maximum probability of survival. Yet the human forces did not disperse. Instead, they coordinated their movements with even more precision. As if defeat had clarified their purpose, rather than weakened it, the Krell supply depot at Kepler Station served as a critical logistics hub for Vexter's forces. The facility maintained weapons, food, medical supplies, and the water necessary for sustaining his crews for extended operations. The depot was protected by 60 soldiers and advanced defensive systems. It was positioned far enough from the main theater of operations that attacks seemed unlikely. Captain David Park came anyway. The human strike team consisted of 9 soldiers, a fact that seemed almost insultingly small when compared to the 60 Krell defenders. Vexter observed this assault through tactical recordings because Park's team executed the raid during a shift change, a window of vulnerability that lasted perhaps 20 minutes. The humans did not attempt to force entry through main corridors. They accessed the facility through maintenance tunnels, power conduits, and waste removal systems, using knowledge of the station's infrastructure that suggested detailed preparation once inside. The humans did something that Vexter's military training had not prepared him to interpret. They avoided direct combat whenever possible. Park's team used tranquilizer weapons on the first sentries they encountered, neutralizing opposition without lethal force. Vexter's initial reaction was confusion. Why would an inferior force deliberately choose tactics that prolonged engagement and increased risk for themselves? Then he understood. They were gathering intelligence. Each Krell soldier neutralized allowed the humans to access communication arrays, security protocols, storage locations, and information that made the raid progressively more effective. Park's team moved through the facility with surgical precision, disabling but not destroying, capturing but not executing, systematically eliminating the depot's defensive capability without triggering the automatic destruction protocols that would have destroyed supplies if lethal force had been applied too aggressively. The contamination of the water supply happened in seconds. A bacterial culture was introduced into the main filtration system, a microorganism that would sicken any Krell who consumed untreated water. The bacteria was species-specific. It posed zero threat to humans, which meant Park's team could consume water from the same supply without concern. This demonstrated an understanding of Krell biology that suggested human scientific knowledge had progressed further than Krell intelligence had estimated. The communications array was destroyed, not through explosives but through a cascade of digital feedback. The humans uploaded corrupted data from damaged equipment into the primary communications network, creating a feedback loop that prevented any transmission from leaving the facility. This was creative problem-solving of the highest caliber, using materials at hand rather than specialized weapons to accomplish the objective. When Krell reinforcements finally arrived, they found the depot secured and the human strike team vanishing into the local asteroid field. The damage assessment revealed a curious detail. 60 Krell soldiers had been incapacitated or captured, but only 2 had been killed. The humans had clearly prioritized preservation of Krell life, a decision that made no tactical sense from a pure efficiency perspective. Shar reviewed the interrogations of captured Krell soldiers, seeking to understand how the humans had maintained such precise control of the engagement. One sergeant reported that David Park had personally administered medical treatment to a wounded Krell officer. After the fighting concluded, the human captain had ensured that the officer received adequate pain medication. despite the officer's status as enemy combatant. Another soldier reported that Park had left the entire medical supply cache, deliberately ensuring that the captured Krell would have access to treatment for their injuries. This was the moment that Vexter realized his entire understanding of warfare was incomplete in Krell military philosophy. An enemy captured was an enemy that should be interrogated and then eliminated. This was efficiency. It removed the logistical burden of maintaining prisoners. The humans operated under a completely different assumption. They seemed to believe that even enemies possessed intrinsic value that transcended their military status. They treated captured opposition with respect, provided medical care, and preserved life. When possible, Alexander began reviewing every engagement he had participated in over his military career, looking for patterns of human behavior that might explain this seemingly illogical approach. He found evidence that humans fought differently depending on context. They were more aggressive against military targets than civilian installations, more devastating when defending their own people than when pursuing conquest for territory alone, and increasingly difficult to predict as the war progressed. The humans were evolving their tactics, learning from each engagement, adapting with remarkable speed. Each commander seemed to carry institutional knowledge about Krell doctrine, combining that knowledge with the specific conditions of individual battlefields to create customized, defensive or tactical solutions. There were no two engagements that proceeded according to the same template. No predictable patterns that Krell strategic planning could exploit. Park's raid on the supply depot became legendary within Krell intelligence circles, not because of its tactical success, though that was significant, but because of what it revealed about human warfare. The humans fought with two simultaneously contradictory principles. They could be ruthlessly effective in pursuing military objectives, yet simultaneously compassionate toward enemies when it was possible to be compassionate. They did not view mercy as weakness. They incorporated mercy into their tactical calculations and somehow became more effective because of it. Vexter requested additional assignment with human military forces specifically to understand this contradiction. His superiors granted the request because Vexter's record remained exemplary. He had secured Orbital Station 7, prevented catastrophic losses at Kepler Station, and maintained overall tactical superiority against human forces. Yet they noted in his personnel file that the commander was becoming increasingly interested in what his superiors termed theoretical tactical applications that had no immediate military value. The commander did not care what his superiors thought anymore. He was beginning to understand that Krell military doctrine was incomplete, that the civilization that prided itself on superior intellect had somehow missed something fundamental about how warfare actually functioned, about what actually motivated warriors to fight, about what sources of strength transcended merely superior technology or training. Human warriors fought for connection, for loyalty to their unit, for protection of the innocent, for abstract concepts like honor and duty that Krell training taught were distractions. At Orbital Station 7, and now at the supply depot, Vexter had witnessed humans accepting death to preserve these values. The Krell soldiers under his command were competent and disciplined, but they fought primarily because their orders compelled them. They fought because they had been trained to do so. Humans fought because something deeper called them to fight, something that motivated action beyond mere survival or advancement. The plague had emerged in Krell territory approximately 2 seasons before Vexter's assignment to pursue human forces. The disease ravaged Krell populations with indiscriminate efficiency, affecting children and adults equally with mortality rates exceeding 70%. The medical establishment had declared it an epidemic without cure, a catastrophe that no amount of military power could prevent. Krell Intelligence attributed the plague's origins to genetic instability in the species. Some theorists suggested environmental contamination. Others proposed that the plague represented natural consequence of the Krell expansion into previously uncontacted stellar regions, whatever the source. The effect was clear. Millions of Krell died from the plague while Krell military focused its resources on territorial expansion rather than biomedical research. Vexter received orders to assault Kepler Station, a research outpost designated as human military installation. The tactical assessment suggested that fewer than 100 human personnel occupied the facility, that defensive capabilities were minimal, and that the station served no purpose that would justify maintaining it against Krell. Occupation. The standard protocol dictated immediate orbital bombardment followed by ground assault to eliminate any survivors. As Vexter prepared for the assault, his communications officer brought him an unexpected message. A human voice, female, requested direct communication with the Krell commander. The message was not a surrender appeal, not a negotiation for evacuation, not a plea for mercy. It was a simple question posed with absolute calmness. Commander Vexter, do you know what research we are conducting at this facility? The question intrigued him enough that he ordered a halt to the assault preparations and answered the communication affirmatively. The human offered a proposal. She would explain the research in person, and she requested that Vexter come to the facility with minimal security detail. It was obviously a tactical trap. A human would naturally attempt to eliminate the Krell commander if given the opportunity. Yet something in the human's communication suggested that trap was not her intention. Vexter brought a security detail of 12 soldiers and boarded a transport to Kepler Station. The entire journey, his military training screamed warnings about potential ambush, but his developing sense of human behavior suggested something different was actually occurring. The human commander who met him in the research facility was named Emma Gonzalez. She appeared thin from extended periods without adequate nutrition, worn by the demands of directing research while simultaneously trying to survive a war. Her facility was not heavily defended. In fact, Vexter observed minimal security presence, suggesting that if Emma had wanted to attack the Krell commander, she had deliberately chosen not to do so. She led Vexter through several laboratory spaces to a central research chamber, where displays showed complex genetic sequences and biological data. What you are seeing, Emma began without preamble, is research into the plague affecting Krell populations. Vexter processed this information and found it illogical. Humans had no reason to research Krell medical conditions. Humans were at war with the Krell. Resources spent investigating enemy illnesses were resources unavailable for human military purposes. Yet the research was clearly extensive, sophisticated, and conducted with rigorous scientific methodology. Why would you research this? Vexter asked, his translator rendering the question in human speech patterns. Emma activated a display showing molecular structures and genetic markers. Because children are dying. She said simply, "You children." Yes, but children nonetheless. The plague kills indiscriminately. It does not distinguish between soldiers and non-combatants, between those who chose war and those who were born into it. She moved toward another display showing medical data and casualty projections. Our estimates suggest that if the plague continues unchecked, it will eliminate approximately 40% of the Krell population within 5 seasons. That is not military casualties. Those are civilian deaths, including children, including infants, including individuals who played no role in this conflict. Vexter's mandibles clicked with agitation. Your military command approved of this research. No, Emma said directly. My military command does not know this research exists. I made the choice independently. I took resources that were available to me and invested them in understanding the plague because I believed that children should not die regardless of their species' actions. The Krell commander felt something fracture within his understanding of the universe. He stood in a research facility designed to help his enemies, speaking with a human commander who had deliberately invested her own resources into saving Krell lives, while the Krell Empire focused its attention on conquest rather than addressing the medical catastrophe destroying its own population. I am offering you this research freely, Emma continued, not as a negotiation, not as a bargaining point, not as a tactical maneuver. The research is complete enough that your medical establishment can begin treatment protocols immediately. The cure is not perfect, but it will prevent approximately 80% of plague-related mortality if administered properly. Vexthur's training taught him to view this offer as deception, as some elaborate trap designed to lower his guard, yet he found he no longer fully trusted his training. Emma Gonzalez represented something that contradicted the entire Krell understanding of biological imperatives. All species naturally prioritized their own survival. Offering aid to enemies violated this fundamental law, yet Emma stood before him demonstrating that humans apparently operated under different biological laws. Why are you doing this? Vexthur asked, his voice carrying unfamiliar uncertainty. Emma met his gaze directly. Because I am human, I am human. And humans protect the innocent, even when protecting the innocent means helping people who are trying to kill us. We protect children because that is what humans do. We choose compassion, even when choice seems illogical, even when choice undermines our own survival chances. Because compassion is who we are. Vexthur made a decision in that moment that would define the rest of his life. He accepted the research. He withdrew his assault forces from the region. He even provided transport vessels to assist with evacuating the human personnel from Kepler Station. He documented everything in his official reports and submitted them to Krell Military Command. The response was immediate and devastating. His commanding officers declared him a traitor to the Krell. Empire orders were issued for his arrest. Vexthur's military career, spanning 35 seasons and encompassing conquest of multiple star systems, ended not in glory but in disgrace. His own species labeled him traitor and began hunting him with the same intensity they pursued human forces. Yet millions of Krell lived because Emma Gonzalez had understood something fundamental about warfare. The most powerful weapon in any conflict is not superior technology or greater numbers. It is the willingness to value the enemy's children as much as you value your own. Vexthur had finally understood what made humans terrifying. It was not their weapons, it was their capacity for compassion, even in the face of existential threat. The interrogation chamber fell into silence after Vexthur finished his narrative. Captain Marcus Holland sat without moving, his human eyes reflecting moisture that indicated emotional response. The Krell commander recognized the signs now. Humans cried when confronted with experiences that transcended their normal psychological categories, experiences that forced them to contemplate their own existence and meaning. I know this story, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying something that Vexthur's translator identified as profound respect. Not the specific details, but the shape of it. The Krell command that pursued you after Kepler Station. We helped extract you from their pursuit. We helped you disappear into regions they could not follow. Vexthur's mandibles clicked softly. The human knew more of his history than the commander had expected. What happened to me after Kepler Station would be incomprehensible to my own species. Vexthur began, his voice carrying the weight of seasons filled with conflict, sacrifice, and redemption. I became a traitor not merely in name but in purpose. I began actively working against the Krell military, sharing tactical intelligence with human resistance forces. helping evacuate human civilians from regions targeted for Krell assault, participating in operations designed to disrupt Krell command structure. The commander stood and moved to the chamber's transparent wall, looking out toward the detention facility beyond. For 5 seasons I did these things without weapons, without armor, without the status and authority that had defined my entire previous existence. I lived among human forces as someone neither fully trusted by them nor acceptable to my own species. Marcus waited for him to continue. I chose this, Vexter said, turning back to face the human captain. I chose to become a traitor because Emma Gonzalez had shown me something true about the universe that my entire civilization had forgotten. Humans are capable of extending compassion to their enemies even in the midst of warfare, even when resources are scarce, even when survival is uncertain, even when the enemy is trying to destroy you. Humans somehow find the capacity to protect the innocent. Vexter returned to his seat at the metallic table, and his posture suggested exhaustion accumulated across multiple seasons. My civilization is built upon the assumption that emotional responses represent weakness that should be eliminated through disciplinary training. However, I observed that emotional commitment to purpose made humans exponentially more dangerous than any Krell soldier I trained, the humans I worked with, the soldiers under Commander Park, the civilians I helped evacuate. All of them fought or sacrificed or persevered, not because they were emotionally stable or because they had eliminated weakness. They fought because they possessed something deeper than mere survival instinct. What did they possess? Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer: meaning. Vexter said simply, they possessed the ability to invest their lives with meaning beyond mere survival. They understood that some things were worth dying for, and that knowledge somehow made them alive in ways that Krell discipline could never achieve. The warriors I served with were stronger, not in isolation, but in connection. They derived their strength from loyalty to unit, from commitment to principle, from the knowledge that their actions protected something beyond themselves. The commander's voice took on a quality that human linguists would have interpreted as profound sadness. The Krell Empire conquered 17 star systems through superior technology and military coordination. We defeated every species we encountered through the application of force and the disciplined execution of strategic doctrine. Yet we are being defeated by a species that fights with something we abandoned long ago, something we labeled as weakness and attempted to eliminate from our civilization. Marcus leaned forward. His expression revealed complete attention to every word. I will tell you what terrifies me most about human warfare. Vexter continued. It is not your weapons or your strategies or your adaptability, though you possess all of these in abundance. What terrifies me is that humans are willing to die for abstractions. You will sacrifice yourselves for the protection of strangers, for the preservation of principles you believe in, for the continuation of cultures and ideologies and hope itself. This makes you unpredictable in ways that our military planning cannot accommodate. The commander's mandibles clicked with what might have been the Krell equivalent of emotion. A human soldier will retreat when outnumbered and return when the opportunity presents itself. She will accept defeat in individual battles because she believes the larger conflict can still be won. She will choose to be captured, rather than kill innocents, even when killing innocents would guarantee her survival. These are not the calculations of a defeated species. They are the calculations of a species that understands something deeper about what it means to fight, to live, and to persist. Vexter stood and approached Marcus Holland directly, and for the first time the human captain showed signs of concern. Fear flickered across his face as the tall alien commander came closer. Yet Vexter merely placed his right hand, the one with articulated joints and tactile receptors, against the human shoulder in a gesture That was not violent. I am here because I need you to understand that my choice at Kepler Station was not made from weakness. The commander said, it was made from the terrible clarity that comes from finally understanding what humanity actually represents. To the galaxy, I choose to work against my own species, not because they defeated me in combat, but because they showed me a different way of being, a different way of fighting, a different way of living that transcended mere survival or conquest or the cold logic that governed my entire previous existence. Marcus remained still under the commander's touch. The Krell military command orders me hunted because they understand something they dare not acknowledge. That a single Krell commander willing to think like a human is more dangerous to the Krell Empire than entire human battle fleets. A person who has glimpsed the truth about human strength, about the power of fighting for something beyond oneself, cannot return to the cold calculations of Krell doctrine. Vexter released the human captain and returned to his seat. His movements carried finality, suggesting the conclusion of his testimony. I am here, the commander said simply, because the human species has demonstrated something that my civilization will spend centuries attempting to understand. And by that time, you will have already reshaped galactic civilization in your image. Human warfare is not terrifying because of your weapons. It is terrifying because you fight with meaning, with purpose, with the understanding that some things matter more than survival itself. This understanding, more than any technology or strategy, makes you inevitable. Marcus remained silent for a long moment, his expression cycling through emotions that indicated profound internal processing. Then the human captain spoke, his voice steady. What will you do now? That choice is yours, Vexter said. I am your prisoner. You can execute me as a war criminal, extract intelligence from my mind, or allow me to live in whatever capacity your people determine appropriate. Marcus stood. His movements revealed resolution. You will not be executed. You will work with us, learning what humans understand and teaching us what the Krell have discovered. The war is ending. Commander Vester, you made that ending possible through your choices. And your work is not complete. For the first time, the alien commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been the Krell equivalent of laughter. A sound filled with release and acceptance and the strange peace of finally finding a place where belonging was possible. The interrogation ended. The collaboration began.